Welcome back to Sow Grow.
Welcome back to Sow Grow and Cook. Sheep or goats? What's best for your small holding? Well, I'll tell you what's probably best for my small holding. I'm doing this in collaboration with Jeff from Brimwood Farm.
Hello and welcome to Brimwood Farm. Now, with the help of Saron over at Sow Grow Cook, I have been inspired to answer that age-old question: which is better, sheep or goats?
Now you need to check out his channel. He is a smallholder who lives in East Anglia, which is the far eastern side of the United Kingdom. And we're here in mid-west Wales, and the climate is different. We're much wetter than they are in East Anglia. And I wonder if that affects what works best in terms of sheep or goats. So that's going to possibly come up as a factor.
Back in 2019, we acquired our first goats, Rosie and her sister Alice. We've since progressed to keeping sheep, which we hadn't intended to do so quickly, but we've got a small flock of 10 sheep, some Zwarteblaze, which are big, dark Dutch sheep, and we've got some badger-faced sheep and a few Welsh white mountain sheep. They're lovely, and I'll tell you how we came to acquire those. But first, let's have a little look at our goat setup.
Originally, we just wanted to get a couple of goats to give us some milk so that we could make yogurt and cheese and have plenty of milk for our own consumption. I didn't realize just how much milk a dairy goat could provide. We get liters of the stuff, and really there's only so much milk 2 people can drink in a day. And even when we turn it into cheese, we have quite a lot. And we can't really sell it because we're not sort of tested or licensed to do so. So we had to find another purpose for some of our milk. But before we get into that, here's our setup. Our land is situated just across an extremely tiny lane near our house. So our barn is attached to the end of our house, which means we keep the goats in the barn and we take them out to the field each day as long as it's not pouring with rain, because goats absolutely hate too much rain. They can tolerate a gentle summer shower when the weather's warm, but the winter time they just don't stay out. Not like sheep, because their coats are not weatherproof at all. So look at these 3. They're just so mischievous. That's Grandma playing with her grandchildren. And here we are taking the goats out to the field each day. So we walk them one at a time. We could let them loose, but they might just run down the road. And although it's a very quiet road, I wouldn't trust our goats to not go wandering off. So we walk them, and that's a little bit of extra work for us, but at least we know that they're going to have a nice time in our lovely, luscious summer meadows. And this is where they spend quite a lot of their day. Now we've got a billy goat and a wether, his castrated friend, to keep him company, living in one of the fields, but they have to go in their special paddock when the girls go out. So there's no worry of unwanted pregnancies, because we only like to have one of our nanny goats give birth each year, because that's really all we can manage in terms of the amount of surplus milk we then end up with and the number of babies we have to find homes for. Now, the nice thing is we share with the babies, which means that the mums look after the babies and feed them ad lib, and we just take 1 milk session per day. So Nobody's suffering. We each get enough milk, and as the babies grow, they consume less milk and we get more of it. But eventually, we end up with a lot of surplus milk unless we dry off the goats. But now we found a use for some of our surplus goat's milk, especially at lambing time. We often get orphan lambs now, which we bottle feed with our surplus goat's milk. And they become pets or they become freezer lambs. We have to be practical. We live on a small holding and we are omnivores. Now we try to raise them as gently and as kindly as possible. They get bottle fed by us, by hand, and eventually they progress to grazing out in our meadow, first in a small controlled area, and then they go in the big meadow, and they live a really lovely life. Here they are, 3 little ones that we had last year, taking to the goat's milk really well. It's very similar to the constitution of ewe's milk. And here they are, grazing in the meadow. This is kind of the next stage from being in the barn just drinking milk to being partially weaned and moved along to the grassy area. We have lots of lovely lush grass here and they seem to be enjoying that. And once they get a little bit bigger, we move them into the bigger field where they're left pretty much to graze at will. We don't move them around, they just kind of freely graze. They also get a little bit of, oh, there they go, special lamb feed just to help them grow and give them a little bit of extra nourishment and calories. And they seem to do really well on that. And they sleep in the sunshine and they run around and they play. And we just come out and make sure they've got plenty of water and that they're okay and nothing's bothering them. And it's a friendly and gentle existence. Okay, so we went from having bottle-fed lambs to having 3 ewes, and which we planned on breeding. So this was like the next stage on from just raising orphan lambs. We've got Joss and Janie and Gabby, so mum and 2 daughters. These are the Zwarteblaes, and they're Dutch sheep. Now they provide milk should you want to milk them, and they provide lovely wool and they provide meat. Now we're not intending to do any of those things with these girls at the moment, but we are planning to breed them when we bought them, or we were planning to breed them when we bought them. They are now in lamb currently, so we're hoping to have some Zwarteblaes baby lambs sometime between mid-March and early April, I hope. So the question is now, what do I prefer keeping, sheep or goats? Well, in our case, the goats help to raise some of the sheep, and the sheep look after themselves in the field most of the winter. They've got thick warm coats, they've got lanolin in their fleece, which means it's more or less waterproof. They do have shelter, so in the worst of the weather they have somewhere to stay warm and dry. And they've got a lovely layer of fat under their skin as well, so they're kind of well suited to cold, wet winters. Although their feet, you have to look after their hooves because they can get something called foot rot, so you always have to check to make sure they're not going lame. Foot rot is like when they get too much moisture trapped in their hoof, and bacteria counts can build up. So you have to always keep an eye on that and keep their hooves trimmed and in good condition. And you have to provide somewhere dry and off the wet ground to kind of stand some of the time.
In the wintertime, you have to provide sheep and goats with plenty of hay and some hard feed, as the grazing and the browsing will be pretty well non-existent, especially in the UK.
Okay, sheep can provide milk, meat, and fleece. They're great for lawn mowing, and they make great pets. So, you can keep sheep for pets, or you can just keep them to keep your grass down without having to use a lawnmower. The downside of keeping sheep, they do require a lot of regular maintenance. You do have to shear them every year by law, and it costs money to have somebody come and do that. And sadly, there isn't a lot of money to be made by selling fleeces currently. There used to be. It used to be quite a lucrative business many, many years ago, but not so at the moment. I'm hoping that'll change because wool is such a wonderful thing. Goats, well, they can provide milk and meat and fleece, a bit like sheep. We have them just for milk, and we have them for their lovely manure as well. Okay, and we have them to help clear areas with too many brambles in it, or areas with a lot of tall weeds. There are certain things that goats shouldn't eat, but they can eat quite a lot of pervasive weeds that we find quite annoying, like thistles. They can eat nettles, particularly if they're dried. They eat dock. They eat young trees that you may or may not want growing there, so do be careful if you've got a young orchard growing. So that's a definite con. They are great escape artists, so your fencing has got to be very secure. But then again, that goes for sheep as well. Some sheep are a little bit more wild than others and will jump over fencing or find a way through it. So, one thing I forgot to mention was goats with horns, and that's all of my goats, can get their heads stuck in stock fencing. A couple of mine used to do that, and we had to regularly go and rescue them. So you have to really be on the alert and take measures to go rescue them, because they're always going to get into a little bit of trouble. This little fellow was fine, though. So what's best for me? Well, we tend to like the goats, I think. We just really love their characters and their intelligence and their curiosity, and they're great fun. But don't tell our sheep, because we think they're great fun too.
Oh my god. Are they chasing you, Stella?